They are accused of leading a doomsday cult. They are accused of conspiring to murder 3 people. They are accused of funding their love affair with insurance money and stolen Social Security payments. Lori and Chad Daybell are married. Their spouse is dead, and her children murdered and buried in the yard. It's a crime prosecutors say was fueled by sex, money, and power. The power coming from their ability to convince their followers that the world was ending and dark spirits were taking over people's bodies, bodies which needed to be killed. But where did these beliefs come from? What was Chad Daybell like before he met Lori and before people started dying? Tonight, we take an in-depth look at Chad Daybell's belief system as his trial begins today. His wife, Lori, has already been convicted of murdering her children and conspiring to murder Chad's first wife, Tammy. What will Chad's trial look like? How different will it be from Lori's trial? We are live from Boise, Idaho with answers as we continue our investigation of the Doomsday couple, Chad and Lori Daybell. I'm Vinny Politan. Thank you for joining us tonight here on Closing Arguments, Day 1. Get ready. It is starting again. Another case involving half of the Doomsday couple. Now, let's begin with JJ, little JJ. This guy loved his grandma and grandpa. Oh, yeah. This was a special, special relationship. And they loved him. And they wanted what was best for him. And in their heart of hearts, they absolutely believed the best place for him was to be raised by Lori. Obviously, we know how that turned out. But he loved grandma and grandpa. And they just wanted to make sure he would have the best and have the care and the love that he needed. They were in Louisiana. He was living on the other side of the country, first in Arizona, or Texas, Arizona, and then ultimately Idaho. And they looked forward to these little phone calls, FaceTime calls, where they could see and hear and talk to him, and he just loved talking to grandpa and grandma. This is the reason that this entire investigation began, because of this bond and this love. Because all of a sudden, they couldn't get in contact with JJ. And that's what started this whole investigation. The investigation started here. Now, JJ also loved his mom, Lori. Of course he did. Loved her and trusted her. The way children love and trust their parents. There's this look that they have in their eyes when they see their moms. It's just different. It's just different. The innocence of a child. How you look to mom for all those little things like, you know, comfort, love, nurturing, caring. Because no one is going to have you, no one should have your back like your mom has your back. Like there's no one like mom. You know. The moms that are watching tonight know. The real moms. Not moms like this. But you know, and you know that look that a child has and the trust that that child has. Mom's going to take care of me. Mom's going to make sure I have everything I need. Mom's going to be there to protect me. Mom's always going to be there. And most moms are what I call real moms. They are there day in and day out. It doesn't matter what you do, how you act, where you've been, what's going on. Your mom has your back. Not in this case. Not in this case.
This case, mom murdered him. Like she murdered him. Now, I don't know what's going on in her mind. We all can try to figure that out. But the facts are the facts. We saw the trial. We heard the evidence. We know what happened to JJ was a result of what she did. Now, she didn't act alone. At a minimum, she had the help of her brother, JJ's Uncle Alex. But now the question is, was Chad Daybell also involved? And not only in this case, but in the case of JJ, the case of his sister Tylee, and his wife Tammy. That's what this trial is all about. His involvement in all of this. Like, what did he do? What was his role? And how much are his beliefs and his prophecies and everything that he was saying and all these things he was telling his followers, like how much of that had to do with what happened to JJ, Tylee, and Tammy? And does it all add up to murder? Like I said, get ready, because this trial is happening. It started today, and it's happening out in Boise, Idaho. Not where all this happened. They went to a new venue, just like Lori, new venue in Boise, other side of the state. And Don Nelson from Scripps News Boise has a look at what's happening.
Is Lori Noreen Vallow not guilty or guilty of first-degree murder of Joshua Jackson Vallow? Answer, guilty.
It seems as if we were just reporting that a jury convicted Lori Vallow Daybell and sentenced her to life in prison for the murders of her two youngest children and the ex-wife of her husband, Chad.
I know for a fact that my children are happy and busy in the spirit world because of my communications with my friend Tammy Daybell. I know that she is also very happy. I mourn with all of you who mourn.
Now we are back at the Ada County Courthouse for the trial of Chad Daybell. Chad Daybell, charged with conspiracy, murder, and grand theft in connection with the death of Lori's children, JJ Vallow and Tylee Ryan, and charged with one count of murder with the death of his late wife, Tammy Daybell. Jury selection is expected to last at least a week, maybe longer, and then opening arguments will begin. This is a capital punishment case. Daybell's attorney, John Pryor, argued that it is unconstitutional for Daybell to face the death penalty, while his co-defendant, Lori Vallow, did not. Judge Stephen Boyce writes, quote, "The court is unpersuaded that the death penalty in this instance is sought in manner that is arbitrary or capricious, despite Vallow not facing the same consequence." In June of 2020, Rexburg police confirmed the human remains found on Chad Daybell's property were those of Tylee and JJ. At a pretrial conference in February of this year in Fremont County, John Pryor told Judge Stephen Boyce he plans to call 7 expert witnesses to the stand, but did not say who they were. Madison County Prosecutor Rob Wood will lead the prosecution team.
It is happening. Day one of jury selection. Again, you've got to find folks who, even if they're exposed to this story and may know a little bit about it, may know a lot about it, can sit there, put everything they know aside and be fair and impartial. It's like every other case on court TV. All we do is cover high-profile cases, whether it's high profile in a local jurisdiction or high profile across the nation and around the world like this one. Let's bring in Court TV crime and justice correspondent Matt Johnson, who is there at the courthouse, joining us live from Boise, Idaho. Matt, great to see you tonight. So why don't you bring us up to speed with the latest from day one of this trial, which begins, as all trials do, with jury selection.
Vinny, nice to see you. Yes, we're here at the Ada County Courthouse in Boise, Idaho, and this is the state capitol, and this is now the second biggest trial that this state has ever seen in the history of this community. And it's a much anticipated trial. At least 5 potential jurors have made it through for the first round. Group 2 will have to arrive here at the Ada County Courthouse, where Lori Vallow Daybell was convicted this time last year, and they're going to fill out an additional questionnaire, and then jury selection and voir dire will continue. And, you know, Chad Daybell, we can see this trial because the cameras are being allowed, that court cam feed. We can see Chad Daybell in that pressed white shirt and tie that he wears. He's been very engaged during the jury selection, and especially those answers that these potential jurors are giving about whether or not they can vote for the death penalty. And we've seen quite a few people that were dismissed by the court because they said that they couldn't vote for the death penalty, Vinny.
You mentioned something there. Very engaged, which to me is a contrast to Lori Daybell. Yeah, she was there, she was engaged, but she was also somewhere else, you know, in whatever's, you know, happening between those two ears of hers. But you can see the difference. I mean, just the posture of all this. So let's talk about the charges, because the charges are slightly different as well. The charges against this man, Chad Daybell, versus his wife, Lori.
Just slight differences, but they're facing, remember, they were joined originally when they were charged, and then their cases were severed because he waived his right to a speedy trial, and then there was that discovery, which is the reason why Lori didn't face the death penalty. That's one of the main differences here, but also some of the charges. So let's put those on your screen for you as we go through this. Both of them facing conspiracy charges of Tylee, Tammy, and JJ. And Lori also was convicted of the murder charge of Tylee and JJ. She was also convicted of grand theft. That was one of her charges. Remember, she was all about the insurance money and also money from the government that the children were supposed to receive. Whereas Chad Daybell has some added charges, including insurance fraud and then also murder of his first wife, Tammy Daybell. And we're going to hear a lot more about her in this trial. That's one of the main differences that we're going to see, because Tammy Daybell died on their property, discovered by their son, Garth, who said this to CBS 48 Hours. So we're expecting some of this when he's called to the stand. He told the journalist that I ran over and I picked her up talking about his mom and put her back on the bed. And then I said to my dad, I said, I think she's dead. He went on to say this: my dad was just pacing back and forth, just saying, why? How could this happen? Pointing at pictures on the wall. I can't believe that she's dead. Like, how could this be? What will we do? So I can expect a lot more in this trial from Tammy Daybell. I was just looking at the lead detective in the case, just leaving right now. They've wrapped for the day, Vinny. Detective Hermosillo from Rexburg Police Department. They're also there watching this very closely as we're waiting for round 2 in this trial.
Yeah, a lot of great points there, Matt. And I think you're right. You're right on here with the big difference between this case and the first case. Much bigger focus on Tammy Daybell. I think you're going to see a much more vigorous defense, especially when it comes to Tammy Daybell. And then you've got actual adult children who are in the middle of all of this. Dad is accused of murdering mom, yet the children, at least some of them, are in the house. And one's going to be a crucial witness in all this. This is very different. The other main difference, and I think this is, folks at home will understand this, is we will get to see this trial. We'll actually see it.
Yeah, you're right, you know, because they are allowing court cameras to bring it to you live. Like the first trial, very different because they had severed the two cases, and Judge Boyce was really adamant about not tainting the jury pool that would be for this trial, this death penalty trial. With Lori's trial, remember, they were only releasing audio at the end of the court day, and we had those court sketches each and every day, and then you had to rely on myself and the other reporter here to tell you about things that Lori was doing, crossing her arms, shaking her head, not wanting to be there for the testimony about the kids being found, and also laughing at the witnesses when they took the stand. But the prosecutors and the attorneys are also a little bit different in this time around, because Lori Vallow Daybell, she had different attorneys. She had Jim Archibald and John Thomas, whereas with Chad Daybell, he's had the same attorney through this whole thing, and that is John Pryor.
Yeah, that's going to be, again, different, because we're going to see a much more vigorous defense. Lori Daybell, I feel, handcuffed her own attorneys from doing what they would do in any other case that they were defending inside a courtroom where someone is accused of murder just because of who she is. I don't see Chad Daybell putting any restraints on John Pryor, so I think we're going to see a very vigorous cross-examination. And, you know, I could foresee an attack on Lori Daybell and Alex Cox, right? That's the obvious place in this case, the obvious difference. Lori's not pointing the finger at Chad Daybell during her trial, but I don't think it's going to run that way or work that way for Chad Daybell. I think they're going to go after Lori and Alex because those are two obvious people to go after in all of this.
I think you're right, Vinny, and I think that's what we're going to see once we have a jury seated. Remember, they're looking for 18 potential qualified jurors. That's going to include 6 alternates. And a lot of these people have heard from that first trial when Lori didn't take the stand and when she got very upset, you know, according to my intel, when her defense attorneys pointed the finger at Chad during closing arguments. That's what she was upset about when they read the verdict. So I think this time around, Chad Daybell planning on pointing the finger at her, the goddess, just calling her the mastermind is what the state said during her trial, so he may go along those lines. And then, you know, a lot of the evidence, including the cell phone records and some of the statements from these witnesses like Zulema Pastinas, Alex's wife of a month, they have testified that maybe he is responsible. So that'll be up for this jury to decide, but we can definitely see the fingers pointed at those two.
And the bottom line, there's a lot more at stake in this case for the defendant, which is a potential death sentence here. You know, big difference between life in prison and then death penalty, serving all your time on death row. It's much, much different. And to me, that will also change jury selection, as you're already seeing, but will also change the nature of the way this case plays out and what we see and hear about Chad Daybell.
You're right. You know, we're going to hear more about him being the prophet, and the state is going to want to point the finger at him for being the ringleader in wanting to get rid of the children. Remember, he made those statements when they were looking for an apartment together when he was with his second wife, Lori Vallow Daybell, that the two didn't have any young kids. We're going to hear from the state about the fact that their bodies were found on his property. We're going to hear a lot about these things, and I think that it's going to be a very different trial with a lot of the same evidence is what we can expect.
Well stated. Matt Johnson live in Boise, where it all began today. Jury selection day 1 in the case against Chad Daybell. I think we'll be speaking pretty often over the next couple of months, Matt. Thanks so much. All right, folks, when we come back, we're going to take a closer look at Chad Daybell's belief system. Right? Could this be at the core of everything that happened here? We're going to bring in a guest who knows Chad Daybell very, very well, and will be able to explain that for us. Plus, coming up next hour.
In the low country of South Carolina, convicted killer Alec Murdaugh back in the news and back in court being sentenced for his financial crimes. Was justice served today?
I did terrible things. Each of you placed your trust in me. I was very proud of that. And I'm still today honored by that fact that I deceived each of you.
We are underway in the trial of Doomsday Prophet Chad Daybell.
Prosecutors say they will seek the death penalty against him.
Investigators have recovered human remains at Chad Daybell's residence.
There's no way, Morgan. I could never come up with this.
His wife, Lori Vallow Daybell, has already been convicted.
Now, will her husband end up with the same fate?
It's just so hard to know where the truth ends.
It's the Doomsday Prophet, Chad Daybell, on trial.
What I see is from Brigham City to Santaquin, it's like a special plate of land that will never be destroyed. Nothing bad will ever happen in that stretch of land, and that the people will prosper until the second coming without any trouble.
Yeah, nothing bad will happen unless your name is Tammy, JJ, or Tylee. I mean, that was pretty bad. That's Chad Daybell speaking at a conference. And we referred to him as the so-called Doomsday Prophet. You know, that's sort of the nickname that he's obtained through the years and the coverage of this story of this murder trial. Now, his belief system is really at the heart of everything, I believe, that happened here. Everything. So David Warwick, whose girlfriend is Melanie Gibb, who was good friends with Lori, they did a podcast together and talked about these things, visited Chad and Lori, and he talked about and described a conversation that he had with Chad Daybell. Let's listen.
Now, that weekend, did you see Chad Daybell at all?
Yes. That's when he was trying to teach me about some of their beliefs, about the gathering of the 144,000 and then Satan having powers to push people out of their bodies and then the spirits being stuck.
Who was present during this conversation?
Melanie and Lori.
So I want to have a much deeper understanding of Chad Daybell's beliefs. So we have a special guest joining us tonight in Rexburg, Idaho, religious author of the books The Church of the Firstborn and Tides of Transmutation, and an acquaintance of Chad Daybell. Eric Smith is with us. Eric, thank you so much for joining us tonight. This is such an important part of this story, will be an important part of this trial in trying to understand, and I know that you had some interaction with Chad Daybell. Can we start first with how you knew him and when you knew him?
Back in about 2016, there was kind of an uprising of near-death experience books in the Mormon culture. It was sort of what I think of as the fringe Mormon culture, people who were interested in studying doctrines and things that weren't available from the church. But Chad was speaking at a conference, and I heard him. He mentioned some books, so my wife and I went and read those books, thought they were interesting. Then right about that time, he moved to my city, so we met up at a nearby university, public location, and I kind of arranged that, and he was willing to meet, and the rest is history.
Yeah, well, explain so you meet him, he's in your city. Are you spending a lot of time with him? Are you, like, how well do you get to know him and his beliefs?
That's a good question. We didn't spend a lot of time together, but the time we spent together was personal. It was in, people's homes when he was presenting his books. There was a small group of friends that were sort of forming around this. I was in that. There were maybe 10, 15 of us, and we met several times. All in all, though, in the end, I probably spent maybe 5 hours in person with him. But there were texts, there were phone calls, we would discuss things. And it was enough in the past four years as I've had to process what the heck just happened in my life, sort of to understand, get into Chad's mind and understand what's happening. And so I think I can present to you a pretty accurate, probably a more accurate, comprehensive belief structure that Chad had. And so we could jump into that if you like.
Yeah, I wanted to just give everyone a little bit of a foundation for it. Yeah. So explain it to us. Explain to us Chad Daybell and his belief system.
I like to summarize it in I think there's 3 tiers. Okay, I can give you a high level view and then feel free to chime in on anything that's interesting to you.
Absolutely.
The first tier is just basic Mormonism. He was a Mormon like everybody else, and we had the same beliefs as far as I knew. Nothing too interesting there. The second tier I like to think of as fringe Mormonism, which I just mentioned. This is the most important one to me, and there are 3 or 4 real basic important concepts that come from this tier. And the idea is that early in Mormonism, each of these things were discussed. Mormon scripture and the Bible mentioned some of these belief systems, but the modern church, Mormon church and Christian church, have little to say about it. There were a number of people who were interested in those topics, and so they weren't getting it from church leaders. You could ask them questions, and they either don't know or wouldn't answer. And so a number of really hungry, eager learners were researching these things heavily. And those topics are, I'll just give you a few of them, the heavy hitters: the Church of the Firstborn, the 144,000 mentioned in the book of Revelation in the Bible. Another key concept that comes out of that, the book of Isaiah, and especially Ezekiel chapter 34 and many other places in the Bible, make reference to a figure, a latter-day figure, an end-times figure. And they often refer to him as the Davidic servant, or my servant David, or the one mighty and strong. And this is of the utmost importance when really understanding what Chad Daybell is all about and where he started to go wrong. That's the second tier. Oh, reincarnation is also a part of that second tier. The third tier, I knew nothing about. Most of us didn't know anything about. I've only picked it up from watching news coverage and like this. And the bottom line there is, this is where you start to hear about zombies. For lack of a better term, I don't know, like something like God accepted murder, God sanctioned murder or something of children, of spouses. These are things I never heard him talk about. Most of us never did. They're strange to me. They are unacceptable to me. So I know Chad through tiers 1 and 2, but about a year before all the news coverage broke with Tammy and, Tammy's death, he pulled away and started kind of going a different route. And about that time, I think, is probably when he started developing these third tier belief systems. And as far as I can calculate, that's about when he met Lori. And I think there was this real firestorm of beliefs that happened with all Chad's beliefs, the tier 2 beliefs, mixed with what I see as a kind of a murderous component to it that came from Lori. And I think those just combined and made this explosion. Just a really unfortunate circumstance there.
So how would you describe his relationship with the Mormon Church versus what he was doing here? So was there any sort of, did he consider himself still part of the church? How did he present himself to you and others?
Yeah, right until the very end, as far as I understand, he was in leadership callings. That's what we call him in the church. High ranking. He was assisting like the bishop in meetings. And so he was active. As far as I knew, his leaders accepted him as a good member. But the Mormon church frowns upon, people like us who are asking questions and researching and trying to understand doctrine better. And so from that standpoint, I think members of the LDS church, Mormon church, would say, well, they started going off the deep end, by having these meetings, by, meetings at people's homes, by writing books. Those things are all frowned upon by the Mormon church.
Did you read all of his books?
Not all of them. There were, like the one you have up now, The 1 Foot in the Grave. I didn't read that. But he had a couple series that were about the end times. And I came at all this through a doctrinal research. I was reading scriptures and trying to understand those fringe doctrines that I mentioned a minute ago. And that's why I read those. The end times, that was something interesting to me. And being a member of a church where the end times or the latter days is actually part of the title of the church, I felt like it was free game to research those things. But you find in the Mormon church, you actually shouldn't really talk about that too much. You mention that in a church meeting or something, they'll look over their shoulders and like, who's this guy? What's he researching? You know, like it's frowned upon, even though it's right there in the title of the church. But anyway, so I hope that helps answer that a little bit.
Absolutely. Now getting to Chad Daybell and Lori and Tammy. Did you have any interaction with Tammy? Was she part of all of this, these meetings, you know, obviously before she passed away, but was she kind of in the mix in these, you know, going around to different homes and talking about this stuff? Did Chad talk about Tammy?
Those are good questions. I would say she was very much not part of the mix. Anything that I ever attended related to Chad, I never saw her there. On the other, but my wife and I did have like a barbecue or two with their family, and so we met her there. She was such a sweetheart. She was kind, but she was shy and reserved and wasn't real talkative. But she did have a really funny side. When she laughed, it was just hilarious to watch her. She just had a real sweet personality. My wife and I really thought a lot of her, but not a lot of interaction with her. So she was not involved much. You mentioned Lori. I never knew Lori Vallow existed. That's kind of that tier 3 stuff that I was just never exposed to, and I think a lot of us in the North Utah, you know, Idaho area didn't really know anything about Lori. So that's kind of my exposure to Tammy and Lori.
Eric Smith, great to have you on the program tonight. I hope you'll join us as this case continues over the next couple months. We really do appreciate it.
Pleasure, Vinny. Thank you.
All right, folks, when we come back, we're going to talk more about this. We will have a member of Lori's family and Mike King, religious cult expert, get their take on what happened here.
Because of her manipulation and deception, she would find somebody that could manipulate, like he was manipulating, deceiving too. He tricked her, she tricked him. They tricked each other so well that they were their equal opposite evil match for each other. Right. Like they got exactly what they put out. You know, what you put out comes back to you. I think that's what they did for each other.
Unbelievable. That's Melanie Gibb, again, a friend of Lori Daybell, and then got to know Chad as well, giving her take on all of it. Key witness in the case, key witness in all of this. Let's bring in some more of our special guests joining us tonight in San Antonio, Texas. A cousin of Lori Vallow and author of the book, I Walked Through Fire to Get Here, Megan Connor is with us. And also joining us, retired police commander, religious cult expert, host of the Profiling Evil podcast, Mike King. Great to have you both here. Mike, I just wanted to start with you on what we just heard from Eric Smith, who got to know Chad Daybell pretty well. It seemed like it was a progressive increase of going from Mormonism to like this fringeness to now we're in the world of zombies and we're killing children.
Wow, I'll tell you what, he is something. I really enjoyed listening to him. What a great find for Court TV to bring him on. I think he hit the nail on the head, Vinny. It's the idea that you have mainstream religion, and then you get these people that start, and I call them predatory people, who start to go off and they send out these little trial balloons kind of sharing whatever it is their thing is, whether it's about power and control or about sex or whatever the case may be. And they start finding people with like-minded ideologies. And, you know, the internet's made this so much easier, but we see him starting to get little groups put together, a household, I think he said 10 or 15 people in it. Well, that's not a church, but that's certainly a group of people with the like-minded thought that the world's coming to the end. And then they start building upon that, and people start talking about them, and it reaches others. And kind of like the Borg in the old sci-fi movies, they get this ability to reach out and start building their little kingdom, and they build it based on some kind of familiar things like scripture and other things that people that are involved in either that faith tradition or other faith traditions might say, yeah, that has a ring of truth to it. And then they start slowly introducing their wacky ideologies.
Yeah, and I'm trying to piece together which part of that ideology includes hanging out in Hawaii by the pool in the bathing suits, like that. To me, this is what was going on here. Like, this is such a big part of it. But then we hear what drew Lori to Chad apparently were these beliefs. She was like a follower of his. We'll see how it plays out in the trial. But Megan, as we see these beliefs get more and more extreme, are you surprised? Do you think that Lori was pushing him, or was he doing everything he could to pull her in?
I think it was definitely a little bit of both. I think she brought some of her religious beliefs to the time when she met Chad, and Chad certainly had his own theology that he sort of developed, and I think when they got together, it just sort of snowballed. And you see in that video when Lori's being served with papers, under her right knee is a copy of the book Visions of Glory, and that's where a lot of this fringe belief sort of came from. It's like Mormon church fan fiction, where they do describe people being possessed by evil spirits. They do describe a lot of the end times. And it's supposed to be someone who's had a near-death experience. And so that ties in to Chad and his group of followers, and what sort of gave them an affinity for each other. They were all interested in the end times and the near-death experiences. And I think you were right earlier when you said, and Mike was right earlier when you talk about having a little group of people that are listening to you, and you start trying out ideas and seeing what people believe and seeing what, resonates with people. You see their reactions in the crowd, and you think to yourself, okay, well, they liked that, so let me go take that a little bit farther. I think that's where this all started and how it sort of ramped up to where it got really toxic.
Let's listen to one of those followers. I think she'll be another crucial witness in this trial, Zulema Pastines, who was one of the followers. Take a listen.
What was Melanie Gibbs' gift?
She was a gatherer.
Okay. What was your gift?
Chad said that I was my gift was the elements.
What does that mean?
To be able to work with the elements.
What does gatherer mean?
Gathering people who were awake.
Okay. What does awake mean?
Awake to the signs, aware of the times, and aware of the things that are to come prior to the second coming.
And these were gifts identified or described for you by Lori and Chad?
Yes.
Okay. Did Lori tell you this, or did Chad? Or
Chad.
Both? Chad. Okay. What was Serena? What was her gift?
Chad said that she was a very powerful goddess.
Okay. What about Melanie Boudreau? I think you call her Melly, but Melanie Boudreau. What was her gift?
I don't remember.
Mike, let me ask you about what's happening here. Like, everyone has these special gifts. I guess that's what kind of keeps them hooked in all of this, right?
Yeah, and they lean on these kinds of leaders that take away their own responsibility to make decisions. So what they do is here you got Chad Daybell giving people this dispensation that you are powerful and can control the elements, and you are a really powerful goddess. And these people think, holy cow, I'm something. I've never really been something in my life, and all I got to do is keep following this guy. He kind of sounds pretty interesting and sounds like he's spiritual. If I keep following him, maybe I'm going to have more light and knowledge than anybody else. I'm going to become closer to God than anybody else. I'm going to have my time here on earth figured out for me and a place in heaven guaranteed because I'm following this person. And this is what they're so good at, is deceiving the people that they are bringing along and making them feel more important. You know, we call it love bombing when it's just a regular cult bringing people in and telling them how great they are. But people respond to that because all of a sudden, I am really important, at least to this person who's going to make me more important to a whole bunch of other people.
Megan, did Lori try to recruit any members of the family?
Well, she obviously recruited Melanie, and I think she tried to recruit her siblings and some other cousins as well, pretty much anybody who is in proximity to her and had an interest in prepping and near-death experiences. And luckily, most of the family members dismissed those beliefs and sort of rejected it. But I know that some family members did attend some of those gatherings and listen to the podcasts and get really involved. Obviously, Alex followed her very closely.
Yeah, Alex followed her, like literally followed her wherever she went. He was there. Mike, before we run out of time tonight, what in this trial as it's coming up, what do you expect to hear regarding this relationship between Chad and Tammy? Because I thought it was interesting when Eric said she was never really around. And like all this stuff is happening, and it doesn't seem like she's in the loop in any of this.
Yeah, I think what we're going to learn is that she was taking care of a family and trying to hold a family together. She was trying to work a little bit and create some kind of a self-preserving career for herself. And Chad was out running from place to place, trying to keep together this fledgling book business. And I understand some books have sold really well since he went to jail and was focused on this crime here. But I don't think it was doing so well before that, other than selling a few copies when he went to these groups of 10 or 15 people. I think we're going to learn that Tammy was doing and holding a family together. Chad was working on all this wacky stuff that he was pushing and making affairs with women. And all of that was leading up to these miraculous visions and prophecies that said, hey, God's already revealed to me that Tammy's not going to be around. And I don't look at that as a revelation as much as I look at that as premeditation, Vinny.
Yeah, exactly. Fine line between premeditation and revelation. Megan, we only have like 15 seconds here. Is there anything that you didn't hear in the first trial that you think we might hear or you want to hear more about in this second trial?
I'm hoping to hear more about Alex's involvement and his movements and some more evidence about how he participated. I think that's going to put to rest some of the questions that I have and hopefully bring some healing to our family as well.
All right. Big thank you, Megan Connor. I walked through the fire to get here. Mike King, Profiling Evil podcast, and of course, Deceived as well. Thank you both so much. We'll be talking a lot as this trial is just getting started today.